My name is Clara Reed, and I make a living by being invisible. People don't know my face, they don't know my voice. They don't know the way my hands shake after writing an emotional scene, or how many cups of stale coffee it takes to resurrect a dying plot. But they know my words stolen, repackaged, printed under someone else's glamorous author photo. I'm the ghost who writes the stories that make other people famous. And today, I'm sailing straight into the most dangerous job of my career. The cold Seattle wind bites my cheeks as the ferry cuts through the dark water, heading toward the isolated island where Silas Hale has been hiding for the past 2 years. I clutch my backpack tighter, trying to stop the tremble in my fingers. Not from fear, at least, that's what I tell myself, but from the weight of everything at stake. Rent, hospital bills for mom, student loans, life. All of it depends on this one assignment. Silas Hale isn't just a client, he's a legend. A myth wrapped in ink and shadows. 7 consecutive best-selling crime thrillers, 2 movies, millions of fans who dissect his every sentence, and then, nothing. Silence for 2 years. No interviews, no signings, no new books. Rumors say he lost his mind, destroyed his own manuscript, and retreated to this fog-drowned island like a wounded beast. So why me? Why hire an unknown ghostwriter when he could have chosen any award-winning prodigy? The answer is tucked in a brief message from his agent. Silas Hale requested you by name. Which makes no sense. I've never met him, never spoken to him, never even been in the same room as someone who knows him. A shiver crawls up my spine as the fog thickens around the ferry, swallowing everything in a white blur. For a brief moment, I can only see my own breath suspended like a ghost in the air. Perfect, I think. A ghost arriving on a ghostly island. The engine hums beneath my feet, vibrating through the metal deck. Every few seconds, the foghorn booms, echoing across the water, like a warning. Turn back. Too late. The ferry slows, scraping gently against the dock. The only silhouette waiting on the pier is a tall woman dressed in a black coat, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun. She looks like she stepped out of a gothic novel. I sling my bag over my shoulder and walk toward her, boots thudding on damp wood. "You must be Clara Reed," she says, her voice calm but sharp. "Welcome to Hale Island." I offer a tentative smile. "Hi. You must be Mrs. Eve Whitcomb," she replies. "I run the household and manage Mr. Hale's schedule. He doesn't like strangers, or interruptions, or noise." Her gaze sweeps over me quickly. "So you'll need to be discreet." I bite back a laugh. Discreet is literally my job. Her lips twitch, almost amused. "Good. You'll need that skill." She gestures toward a sleek black SUV waiting at the end of the pier. "Come, Mr. Hale is expecting you. Or rather, he's tolerating your arrival." That sounds about right. The ride to the mansion is silent, except for the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires. The forest on either side of the road feels ancient, trees looming overhead like silent witnesses. Fog curls between them, twisting like pale fingers. "This place is," I begin. "Isolated," she finishes. I was going to say creepy. Her eyes flicker toward me. "You are not the first to think so. Many find the island unsettling, including Mr. Hale. Then why stay here? Because genius rarely thrives in comfort." The mansion appears through the fog like a dark monolith, stone walls, tall windows and ivy crawling up the sides like veins. It looks more like a fortress than a home. My stomach flips. This is where I'll be living for the next 3 months. We step out of the car and the cold hits harder here, sharper, like the air itself doesn't welcome outsiders. Inside, the mansion smells of old books, cedarwood, and coffee, strong, bitter, overbrewed. A writer's scent, the kind that clings to skin and stays. "This way," Eve says, leading me down a hallway lined with oil paintings whose eyes seem to follow me. "Mr. Hale prefers privacy. You may only knock if he messages you first." "Understood. You will find notes on the refrigerator. He communicates more easily in writing when he's immersed. Immersed in his mind. Cryptic. Wonderful." We reach a wooden door at the end of the hall. Eve pauses. "He is in here. Be honest. Be brief. And whatever you do, do not flinch. Flinch." Before I can ask, she knocks once and steps aside. "Enter." His voice is low, gravelly, like it hasn't been used in weeks. I push the door open. The room is dim except for the glow of a fireplace and a desk lamp illuminating piles of paper. Silas Hale sits behind a large oak desk, pen in hand, shoulders tense. His black hair is messy, falling over a chiseled face shadowed with stubble. His clothes are simple dark sweater rolled sleeves, but he radiates a quiet coiled intensity. His eyes lift. They're ice gray, sharp, unforgiving. They pin me where I stand. For a long, terrifying moment, he says nothing. Then, "You're late." I blink. The ferry was delayed. "Excuses are the enemy of discipline," he replies, deadpan. Is this an interview or a military interrogation? "I'm Clara Reed," I say, stepping forward. "I know who you are." His gaze trails over me, not in a sexual way, but like he's dissecting me. "Sit." I sit. He pushes a single sheet of paper across the desk. "Write." "What?" "A paragraph." 10 minutes. No overthinking. "I want to see how your brain works." I exhale slowly. "May I ask for a prompt?" "No." "Charming." I pick up the pen. The moment it touches the page, something inside me unlocks. Words pour out like they've been waiting in my veins. Emotion, tension, imagery. All the things I never get credit for. When I finish, my heart pounds. Silas takes the page, reads, and for the first time something flickers in his eyes, interest. "This," he says softly. "Tapping the page isn't the work of an amateur." "I'm not an amateur." "No," he agrees. "You're a ghost." The temperature in the room shifts, almost electric. "You'll do," he says finally. Relief washes through me. "So I'm hired." "You were hired the moment you stepped on the island," he says. "This was merely a test to see if you understood what you were walking into." "And what am I walking into exactly?" He leans back in his chair, studying me with unreadable intensity. "A story that refuses to be written," he murmurs. "A mind that refuses to be quiet. And a man who," he pauses, jaw tightening, "who needs you more than he wants to admit." My breath catches. His eyes lock onto mine, sharp as a blade. "Welcome to the island, Clara. Let's see if you survive it." The fire crackles. The fog presses against the windows. And for the first time since stepping on the ferry, I understand the warning Eve whispered earlier. Silas Hale is not just a client. He is a storm, and I've just walked straight into the center of it. By the time I woke up the next morning, the island had swallowed the world. Fog pressed against the bedroom window, turning the glass into a sheet of dull gray. For a few seconds, I just lay there listening to the low roar of the ocean and the nervous thud of my own heartbeat, wondering why the ceiling didn't look like the water-stained one in my cheap apartment. Then memory snapped back. Silas Hale, the ferry, the contract. "Let's see if you survive it." Right. I was in a stranger's mansion, hired to write a book no one would ever know was mine, for a man whose default setting was armed and annoyed. I swung my legs off the bed, found my jeans and a thick sweater, and stepped into the hallway. The silence was so complete it felt solid. No traffic, no neighbor's TV, no upstairs plumbing, just the distant crash of waves and the faint tick of an old clock somewhere deep in the house. The place felt aware, like it registered every footstep. The kitchen was the first room that looked almost normal. Big windows, marble counters, double ovens, an industrial fridge that could probably hide a small car. Too much space for one reclusive novelist and the ghostwriter he'd dragged onto his private rock. On the fridge door, 3 sticky notes were lined up in a perfect little column. The handwriting was sharp, angled, impatient. "Coffee in the left cabinet. Do not touch the grinder settings. Breakfast is self-serve. Don't burn the house down. Studio 9 a.m. Bring your laptop and your spine." I huffed out a laugh. "So we're doing this," I muttered. "Post-it parenting." Still, I followed the coffee instructions exactly. Partly because I was curious, partly because messing with Silas Hale's grinder settings felt like a good way to get buried under the rose garden. The first sip hit like a small act of God, dark, strong, no nonsense. If his books had a flavor, it would be this. I looked back at the fridge. There was a clean strip of metal under his notes. My fingers actually itched. I spotted a pad of sticky notes by the phone, grabbed one and wrote, "Ghost is awake. Didn't burn anything. Yet. Coffee is dangerously good. Consider hiding it." bringing laptop and spine at 9 a.m., requesting mercy. I slapped it neatly under his list. Tiny yellow act of rebellion accomplished. The studio felt different in daylight. Last night it had been a cave. This morning gray light slid in through the high window, picking out the dust in the air. The fireplace was cold. Stacks of paper ringed the big oak desk like low walls. Silas sat behind it, same chair, different damage. His black hair was damp, curling slightly at the ends. Dark smudges stained the skin beneath his eyes. The mug beside his laptop steamed weakly. "You're 2 minutes early," he said as I walked in. "You're welcome," I answered. His gaze did a quick sweep my face, my laptop back to my face. "You put a note on my fridge. That is what fridges are for. I did not authorize two-way communication." "Then don't leave pens where I can see them," I said. "It feels like consent." A muscle in his jaw ticked. "You're very comfortable for someone who arrived less than 24 hours ago. I learned that if you act like you belong, people believe you do. And if they don't, then I write about them later," I said. "Badly." His mouth twitched. For one terrifying second, it almost became a smile. "Almost." "Sit," he said. I sat. He pulled a thin folder from a stack and slid it across the desk. "This is where the book died." I opened it. Outline. Characters. Setting. A body on an island. A detective with too many secrets. Witnesses who lied for a living. It was pure Silas Hale on paper, clean, sharp, precise. Until halfway down the page where the bullet points ended in a single line on its own, and then it all falls apart. "Dramatic," I murmured. His eyes narrowed. "Problem. You built a perfect machine," I said, tapping the page and then refused to turn it on. "And you've decided that after one glance I've read your books," I said. "You don't hesitate to hurt your characters. That's why readers trust you. You always swing the axe." I looked up at him. "This time you pulled it back." He studied me like I'd just said something medically concerning. "And why?" he asked. Slowly. "Do you think that is?" "You swung at the wrong person," I said. "You started to care about someone on these pages. Suddenly, every choice cost too much." Silence settled between us, sudden and heavy. "You talk too much," he said after a moment. "That's literally what you're paying me for. I hired you to write, not to dissect me. Same skill set," I said, "different patient." He exhaled a sound halfway between a sigh and a laugh. "Open your laptop." I did. The screen lit up, my folders popping onto the desktop. Projects, rejects, dead but still loved. His brows rose. "You name your failures." "They're not failures," I said. "They're just pre-successes." He ignored that. "You'll draft in first person from the detective's point of view. I handle structure and clues. You handle emotional texture." "Emotional texture," I repeated. "That makes it sound like upholstery." "It's the difference between readers remembering a twist and remembering how it felt when they read it," he said. "You're good at the second. You decided that off one sample. I read everything your agent sent," he said. And his voice went flat. "Piece you published under a pseudonym." Heat crawled up the back of my neck. "You found that?" "Hard to miss," he said. "You write intimacy like a crime scene. No wasted movement, no convenient shadows." His gaze stayed on my face. "That precision is what I want. Not the sex." "Good," I said lightly. "Because that would make this a very different contract." Something dark flashed behind his eyes. A storm cloud, small but there. "I need that precision turned toward fear, guilt, obsession," he said. "Think you can manage that, Ghost?" "I can. Prove it." He stood cross to a shelf and came back with a blank notebook. He set it in front of me along with a pen. 10 minutes, he said. "Write a scene where the detective wants something he knows he shouldn't have. Something or someone." "You have a timer, kink," I said. "Deadlines separate writers from hobbyists." The notebook lay open, white and waiting. I lowered my hands to the page and let my brain slide sideways. I saw him almost immediately, the detective. Exhausted, wired, standing in a too-quiet kitchen on a stormy night. The suspect across from him, barefoot on cold tile, pretending not to shake. I wrote the way I always did when something clicked, fast, messy, trusting instinct more than thought. Fingers brushing as he passes her a glass of water. The way his eyes keep dropping to her mouth. The way he hates that he notices. The way wanting feels exactly like danger, and he can't tell them apart anymore. When I looked up, my hand ached. Done, I said. Silas hadn't moved from his chair. He took the notebook, opened it, and read without sitting down. The only sounds were the soft scrape of paper and the dull thud of my heartbeat in my ears. I watched his face instead of his hands. His focus sharpened. His shoulders went tighter. His gaze slowed over certain lines like they snagged. When he finally looked up, the air in the room felt different, heavier, somehow more charged. This, he said quietly, is what I meant. Good different or bad different, I asked. Uncomfortable, he said. Uncomfortable sells, I said. People don't remember safe stories. Uncomfortable is fine on the page, he said. It's a disaster when it bleeds. His eyes stayed on me a second too long. Then he shut the notebook. We'll use this, he said. Not verbatim. As a spine. Refine it tonight. Don't soften it. I wasn't going to. Most people do. They pull back when they get too close to the truth. Are we still talking about the detective, I asked, or about you? He didn't answer. His phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. Eve needs a signature, he said. We're done for now. Do I get a schedule, I asked. You'll get notes on the fridge. Of course I will. He hesitated, then slid the notebook back toward me. His fingers brushed the edge. The contact was nothing but my skin still logged it like evidence. You said you act like you belong so people believe you do, he said. Yes. His eyes held mine. You belong in this room. Act accordingly. The words hit harder than any compliment. By the time I found something to say, he was already at the door. Silas, I blurted. He paused, hand on the knob. Why me? I asked. You could have hired anyone. Why request me by name? Something shuddered behind his eyes. Because he said you write like someone who's had to be invisible to survive, and only people who've disappeared know how to see others clearly enough to hurt them on the page. A beat. I need that. The door clicked shut behind him. Later, back in my room, the ocean filled the window, gray on gray waves slamming themselves against the cliffs, like they were trying to knock the island loose. On the nightstand, someone had left a glass of water and a folded note. Same sharp handwriting. You did not in fact request mercy. Noted. Dinner at 7. I eat in the study. You may eat in the kitchen. Or don't. I'm not your parent. The generator hum is loudest during storms. Ear protection in the top right drawer of your desk. I snorted, grabbed a pen, and wrote back, Ghost appreciates the ear protection. Will attempt not to scream during thunderstorms. Kitchen is fine. Minimal small talk guaranteed. Might leave more notes on your fridge. Consider it rent. My hand hovered. On impulse, I added one more line so light the ink almost didn't show. Question for later. How do you write about people if you're determined never to be one? I stared at it. Too sharp. I crossed that line out until the paper threatened to tear, folded the note again, and took it downstairs. His 3 sticky notes were still perfectly aligned on the fridge. I slid mine underneath them and stepped back. Somewhere in the house, a door opened and closed. Footsteps moved across hardwood, steady, contained, too controlled to be relaxed. Outside, the sky was still pale and quiet. Inside, though, something had already started. That dangerous little spark I only ever felt when a story was about to eat me alive was waking up, stretching. This time, I wasn't sure if I was the one writing it, or if Silas Hale was slowly, quietly writing me. I didn't see Silas again until late afternoon. The island had its own rhythm, a slow, haunted pulse that made time feel elastic, stretching and contracting whenever it wanted. I spent most of the day revising the scene he'd assigned, drinking too much of his lethal coffee, and trying not to obsess about the way his eyes had lingered on me after reading my notebook. By the time Eve knocked on my door with a clipped "Mr. Hale requests you in the East Wing," my nerves were a tangled wire. The East Wing felt colder than the rest of the house. Not physically, the temperature was the same, but emotionally. It felt like stepping into a part of the mansion built out of thoughts instead of brick. Dark thoughts, heavy ones. Eve said nothing as she led me down a narrow hallway lined with bookcases that reached the ceiling. Some shelves were neatly organized, others looked like they'd survived a small angry tornado. Manuscripts, notebooks, sticky notes peeling at the corners, a cracked mug with dried coffee fossilized inside. At the end of the hall was a door. Heavy, Iron hinges, no handle on the outside. Eve stopped. "He's inside," she said. "Do not touch anything unless he tells you." "And Clara?" "Yes. There are many rooms in this house," she said softly, "but this one is the only one that breathes." Before I could ask what that meant, she knocked twice and walked away. The door opened a few seconds later. Silas stood on the other side, sleeves rolled up, hair messy in that deliberate, infuriating way attractive men get away with. He looked like he hadn't slept, but also like exhaustion was his natural state. "Come in," he said. I stepped inside, and immediately understood what Eve meant. The room did breathe. Not literally, the walls weren't expanding like lungs, but something about the air felt alive, charged, electric. A quiet, invisible hum ran through it like the room had grown a consciousness from soaking in too many stories. It was huge, bigger than I expected. One side was lined with windows overlooking the ocean waves slamming into the cliffs. The opposite wall was covered floor to ceiling with corkboards crammed with newspaper clippings, photos, handwritten notes, strings connecting points the way detectives do in movies. But this wasn't chaotic. It was precision masquerading as madness. Silas watched me take it all in. "This is where the real writing happens," he said. "The desk is for pretending I'm civilized." "What do you call this room?" I asked. He hesitated. "The mind." Of course it was. He walked past me, stopping in front of a board filled with photos of city streets, time-stamped security footage stills, and scribbled dialogue fragments. Some lines were crossed out, some circled, some underlined so violently the paper had torn. "This is the book," I asked. "This is everything," he said. "The discarded paths, the alternate motives, the evidence that led nowhere. And the things I wasn't ready to write." He tapped a black and white photo, a woman's profile mid-turn blurred. "Who's she?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. "A witness, a liar, a necessity, based on a real person." His jaw tightened. "A mistake." My stomach twisted with curiosity, but I didn't push. Instead, I moved closer to the wall, reading a few fragments. He knocked, but the silence knocked back. She knew the truth, the way some people know storms. He wanted to trust her. Wanted. The most dangerous verb in the language. I turned to him. "These lines are beautiful." "They're useless," he said. "Pretty sentences don't save a broken story." "Sometimes they do. Not this time." I watched him, the way he stood, too straight, too controlled, like he was holding something inside with sheer stubbornness. "Show me the part that scares you," I said. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp as cut steel. "Nothing scares me." "You hired me," I said softly. "That alone proves something scares you." His expression flickered. Barely, but I saw it. Without a word, he walked deeper into the room. I followed. Here the air hummed louder, tension compressed into physical sound. A different board stood at the center. This one was organized too perfectly. No mess, no chaos, just two columns of notes. Left side, what happened? Right side, what should have happened? I stared. "Silas, this isn't about the book." "No." His voice was low. "It's not. Is it about you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped close enough that I felt the heat from his body. He pointed to a note on the left column, a date scribbled in red. 2 years ago, he said, I wrote a book. The best thing I ever created. But something happened. I waited. He pointed to the right column. I rewrote the entire thing. Every page, every choice, every truth. "You rewrote reality," I murmured. "I tried," he said. "But the truth never stays dead." He moved away abruptly, as if proximity to confession was too dangerous. "I brought you here because I need someone who writes emotion without fear, someone who digs, someone who sees. You think I see, you know." He looked at me again. "I think you could. And that's the problem." I swallowed. The room felt smaller suddenly, though nothing had changed. "Clara," he said, voice low, "this book isn't fiction anymore. It's a map. And every writer who tried to help before you—" He stopped. "Couldn't handle it." I finished. "They quit," he said. "Some lasted a week, one lasted 3 days, one lasted 6 hours. Why?" He didn't answer with words. He turned to a small table near the window. A box sat on top, wooden carved beautiful. He opened it slowly, revealing a stack of torn notebook pages. My drafts, he said. What's left of them? What happened to the rest? I burned them. Why? He looked at me, eyes dark, almost haunted. Because keeping them was more dangerous than losing them. A chill crawled up my spine. Silas. Dangerous how? His gaze dropped to my mouth. Not with desire, with calculation, like he was weighing truths and consequences. Then he stepped closer. Close enough that I felt his breath on my face warm and steady despite his tension. Close enough that the room held its breath for us. In this room, he said quietly, stories don't stay on the page. They bleed. They become real. And reality has teeth. A shiver ran through me. Not fear exactly, but something sharper. You're warning me, I said. I'm telling you, he corrected. Once you start writing with me in here, you won't leave the same. I'm not afraid. You should be. Another step. Now he was inches away. You want the truth, he whispered. The real reason I hired you. I nodded, unable to speak. He leaned in his voice a slow, dark ache. Because you write like someone who's been caged, he said. And only caged people know how to open locked doors. My breath hitched. Is that what you want? A door opened. I want the story finished, he said. And I want someone strong enough to face it. His hand lifted, not touching me, but hovering just near my cheek, a breath away. The proximity burned hotter than any contact. Then abruptly he lowered it. We start tomorrow, he said, voice clipped again. Morning, early. The spell broke. Silas, go. But before the room decides it likes you, he said softly. I didn't know if he was joking. I didn't think he was. I turned toward the door, heart pounding, every nerve alert, every breath too loud. As I opened it, I looked back once. Silas stood exactly where I left him, in the center of the room, surrounded by evidence and ghosts, staring at the board like it held both salvation and damnation. And somehow I knew whatever lived in this room wasn't fiction. Not anymore. And after tonight, neither was I. The next morning, the island felt closer. Not geographically, emotionally, like it had taken one quiet step toward me in the dark. I woke to the sound of waves pounding the cliffs and the low hum of the generator in the walls, a mechanical heartbeat under stone. Light leaked through the curtains in a dull gray smear. For a few seconds I lay still, wondering why the ceiling looked too high and the air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Then I saw the note on my nightstand. Same sharp handwriting, same impatient pressure. 7 a.m., mind room. Bring the revised scene, and something you're afraid to write. I stared at that last line until the words blurred. Something I'm afraid to write. That narrowed it down to most of my brain. I got up, pulled on jeans and a black sweater, twisted my hair into a knot that felt more confident than I did, and tucked my laptop under one arm. At the last second, I hesitated, then reached into my bag and dragged out the small, battered notebook I pretended didn't exist whenever anyone asked what I was working on next. The hallway outside my room was empty. The house held its breath around me. Every step on the polished floorboards echoed like I was being announced. The door to the mind room was slightly ajar. Voices drifted through the crack. Don't like this, Eve was saying. It's not a democracy, Silas replied. She's a writer, Eve said. On this island. In that room. That makes her my business, too. Clara is different. You said that about the last one. A beat of silence. It seemed to expand and press against my chest. This isn't fascination, he said at last. It's function. She writes like she's standing on a ledge. That's what this story needs. And what do you need? Eve asked quietly. There was no answer. I should have backed away, cleared my throat, done something polite. Instead, I stood there, heart kicking against my ribs, shamelessly eavesdropping, until footsteps approached the door. Eve opened it and found me mid-guilt. For half a second, something like sympathy flickered over her face. Then it smoothed out into professional calm. Good morning, Miss Reed, she said. He's waiting. That sounded less like good news and more like a warning. I stepped inside. The mind room didn't look different from yesterday, but I felt it differently. The boards, the strings, the crowded notes, all of it buzzed with low invisible energy, like a brain mid-thought. The ocean thrashed beyond the window's glass, vibrating faintly with each impact. Silas stood near the central table, sleeves pushed up, forearms tense. His hair was damp as if he'd walked through rain or forgotten to towel it dry. There was a second mug on the table this time. Progress, I decided, or bait. You're on time, he said. You wrote 7 a.m. Like a threat, I replied, setting my laptop down. I believed you. His gaze flicked to the notebook in my hand. You brought it. You asked for something I'm afraid to write, I said. This is the closest thing. We'll get to that. He nodded at my laptop. Open the scene from yesterday. I did. He rotated the screen toward himself and read. Silence stretched between us, thick and alive. I watched his face instead of the words, the small tightening around his mouth when he hit a line he liked, the slight narrowing of his eyes when I'd done something he hadn't expected, the subtle furrow in his brow where in his head he was already pulling things apart and putting them back together sharper. You pushed, he said finally. That's what you told me to do. You made him crueler, Silas said, more honest about how much he enjoys the power he has over her. Monsters who hate being monsters are boring, I said. I wanted him to know exactly what he's doing. And her, I shrugged. She knows exactly what he is. And she steps into the room anyway. His eyes lifted fully to mine. You're very committed to women who see the danger and walk toward it. Maybe I'm just tired of heroines who can't read a room. Maybe, he said softly, you're projecting. Of course I am, I answered. That's what writing is. An organized projection with punctuation. Something like a smile ghosted over his mouth there and gone in a breath. It's close, he said. Close, I repeated. The most frustrating word. Close means we've reached the edge of something honest, he said. Now we stop polishing and start cutting. He snapped the laptop shut and slid it back to me. Now, he said, show me the thing you're afraid of. My fingers tightened around the little notebook. The cover was worn soft, the corners bent, pages swollen from old coffee spills. I had written most of it on nights when sleep refused to come, and my brain insisted on replaying every difficult conversation I'd never had. This isn't part of any project, I said. It's just mine. Good, he said. The honest things usually are. He held out a hand. I didn't move. You can't expect me to bleed on paper for you without flinching, I said. That's exactly what I expect, he replied. But we'll build to that. For now, we start here. His fingers curled once, a silent, impatient beckon. Give it. I inhaled, then crossed the short distance and put the notebook on the table between us. He didn't open it. Read, he said. I blinked. You want me to read it out loud? This is an audio medium, he said. If it doesn't land when spoken, it doesn't land. I want to hear how you phrase your own tension when you think no one is listening. Silas, this isn't edited, I warned. Good, he said. Editing hides the crime. I want the original scene. My heart stuttered once in my chest. He hadn't moved closer, but the space around us felt smaller. I flipped to a page I'd marked months ago. The ink was a little smudged where my hand had rested. My voice sounded too loud when I began. At first I read, he blames the storm for the way the air feels tight in his lungs. The house groans. The windows shudder in their frames. The generator hums somewhere behind the walls, a low animal sound. It's easier to blame the weather than admit the truth that the pressure has a shape and it's standing barefoot in his kitchen, pretending not to look at him. Silas didn't move. His attention stayed locked on me, not the page. I kept reading. He hands her a glass of water. Their fingers touch. It's quick and technically accidental, except nothing about the way the air shifts feels accidental. Not to him. Not with the way her breath stutters. Not with the way his pulse answers quick and stupid, as if his body hasn't read the rules. The room shrank around us, sentence by sentence. I read about the way the woman leaned her hip against the counter like she'd done it 1,000 times somewhere else, but never in his kitchen. About the way he cataloged small details to avoid thinking about the big dangerous one, that he wanted her there, that he wanted to keep her there, that he couldn't afford either. The scene never tipped into overt touching. No wall presses, no whispered filth. Just proximity and restraint, and the awful delicious knowledge that one wrong move would change everything. By the time I reached the last lines, my hands were damp on the paper. He wants, I finished, voice lower. And wanting is the problem. Wanting has always been the problem. Desire ruins judgment, and judgment is the only thing that has ever kept him alive. So he stands shoulder to shoulder with danger and pretends the storm is outside, not under his own skin. Silence hit like a wave. I closed the notebook slowly. Well, I asked, trying to sound casual and landing somewhere near breathless. Silas inhaled long and steady, like he'd been holding his breath. That he said at last is the first time in 3 years I've heard intimacy written like the person holding the pen actually knows what it feels like. My face went hot. So, not too much. It's not enough. I frowned. You're going to have to explain how that's a critique. You're still protecting them, he said. You cut away right where the pulse spikes. You pull the camera back the second it gets too honest. You just said it felt real. It does, he said. But it stops short of where it hurts you. He tapped his own chest once. Here. You flinch internally, and your pen follows. You let them stay on the safe side of the line you've already crossed. That's not a flaw, I argued. That's decency. This isn't decency, he said quietly. It's dissection. We're not here to behave. We're here to tell the truth. About desire, I asked, or about you? His gaze didn't move from my face, both eventually. The honesty in that scraped against something raw inside me. He reached for the notebook, then finally touching it. His fingers brushed the worn edge. The contact was brief but unreasonably intimate. He scanned the page I'd read, eyes flicking over my handwriting, the margin notes, the lines I'd scribbled out. The intimacy of that made my skin prickle more than if he'd actually laid a hand on me. Here's what we're going to do, he said. You're going to rewrite that scene from the detective's perspective. I already did, I said. That was his perspective. Then you'll go closer, he said. Inside the exact second, he realizes he wants her. Line by line, no metaphors to hide behind. Then you'll write it again from her point of view. Twice I asked, twice he confirmed. The first pass will still be you protecting yourself. The second might actually get somewhere. And while I'm busy exposing my subconscious on paper, what exactly will you be doing? Listening, he said, and watching where you hesitate. You're asking for a lot of trust. He considered that, then nodded once. Yes. Is that supposed to be comforting? No, he said. It's supposed to be clear. He stepped back, giving me physical space even as the conversation narrowed in. I don't let just anyone in here, Clara, he added. You've seen more of this room in 2 days than some people did in 6 months. What happened to them, I asked. They left, he said simply. Or I asked them to. Because they weren't good enough. Because they weren't willing to be honest, he said. With me. Or with themselves. He poured coffee from the carafe on the side table, set a mug near my elbow without asking, and leaned over my shoulder just long enough to tap a blank page in the notebook. Right there, he said, voice close to my ear. This is where the scene really starts. Where you get scared and cut away. Next draft you don't. You stay. One sentence past what feels safe. His breath brushed my cheek. Completely accidental. Completely not. My pulse did a traitorous little jump. He straightened. You'll work in here this morning, he said. This room doesn't like liars. If you stay, we'll both learn something. And if I don't, I asked, then Eve will book you the noon ferry. He said it casually, but the challenge sat between us like a third presence. I looked at the notebook, at the boards, at the window where waves kept throwing themselves against rock that would never move for them. I could leave. I could call my brother, tell him it was too weird, too intense, too much. Find another job, scrape by. Pretend I hadn't seen the way Silas Hale watched the world like it was a crime scene, and he was the only one qualified to testify. Instead, I uncapped my pen. Okay, I said. Let's see what happens. He studied me for a second longer as if verifying that this wasn't bravado. Then write, he murmured. And don't you dare look away when it finally hits the vein. He walked to the far side of the room, pretending to rearrange a stack of files, but I could feel his attention like a hand between my shoulder blades. I bent over the page, heart thudding. And for the second time since stepping onto this island, I chose to stay exactly where the fear was, and write anyway. Chapter 5. Ghosts on the Screen. The storm arrived the same night the email did. By evening, the sky was one solid bruise, and rain hit the windows hard enough to rattle the glass. The generator's hum climbed into a steady growl under the floor. I was at the little desk in my room, stuck on the same line Silas had circled. He wants. Every time I tried to go past it, my chest tightened like my own body didn't trust me with desire on the page. My inbox chimed. I glanced over expecting spam or a bill. Instead, I saw subject hail, press appearance schedule. The sender was a publicist. I opened it. Silas. Confirming tomorrow's live segment on Crime After Dark at 8 p.m. Eastern. Talking points. 2-year hiatus. Return to form with upcoming book. Rumors of collaboration. Ghostwriting your call. Producer is thrilled. Harper will be on the panel with you. Chemistry always tests well with audiences. M. Harper. There was a press kit attached. I clicked it open. On one side, Silas Hale, best-selling author. On the other, Harper Lane crime editor. Bright smile, red lipstick, the woman publishing liked to call a fearless new voice. Once she'd called my own book promising, and almost there. I scrolled to her solo bio. Award-winning author of The Hunger Season, a raw emotional thriller about two siblings surviving poverty betrayal and a corrupt medical system after their mother's illness. My premise, my structure, my spine. Her name on the cover. I hadn't searched her in a year. Every article felt like picking at a scar. Seeing her tied to Silas to this project turned the ache sharp again. Harper will be on the panel with you. Chemistry always tests well with audiences. I shut the laptop hard enough that the mug beside it jumped. The room felt too small. I grabbed my notebook and left before I could talk myself into staying. The hallway was dim, the storm outside shoving shadows against the walls. My steps carried me toward the east wing. The door to the mind room was closed. I turned the knob. It opened without resistance. Without Silas, the room still felt full. The boards watched. The strings hung in their web. The box of torn pages sat on the side table. I walked to the central board. What happened? What should have happened? At the bottom of the showed column in smaller handwriting than the rest was a line I hadn't seen before. He chooses the truth even if it destroys the story. Lightning flashed. Thunder answered almost on top of it. The glass rattled in its frame. Footsteps sounded behind me. I turned. Silas filled the doorway. Sweater, dark expression, darker rain still clinging to his hair. You shouldn't be in here alone, he said. You left the door unlocked, I answered. Mixed message. His gaze flicked to the board, then back to me. You saw the email. About your TV reunion with my favorite thief, I said. Yeah. Loved the part about your chemistry. Annoyance flashed in his eyes. Harper is not your villain. She stole my book. Allegedly, he said. The word landed harder than the thunder. You of all people are going to say allegedly, I snapped. You build entire plots out of tiny tells, but you can't spot plagiarism when it's wearing designer heels. This industry is a machine, he said evenly. Sometimes ideas overlap. Sometimes, don't I cut in? Don't gaslight me in your murder room. I know what she did. The generator's hum climbed. Rain hammered at the glass. Clara. Did you know I pushed before I came here? He didn't look away. Yes. Air left my lungs all at once. And you hired me anyway, I said slowly, so I could watch you sit next to her under studio lights while she smiles over the grave of my work? That's not what's happening. Then tell me what is I demanded. Because from here it looks a lot like I stepped back into the room that gutted me. I didn't put you on TV, he said sharply. I put you in this room. There's a difference. Big comfort. The show is noise, he said. This room is work. This is where we decide what the story really is. And I don't invite thieves in here. You just collaborate with them on camera. Let me handle Harper. I already tried letting other people handle Harper, I said. It didn't work. We stared at each other, the storm beating against the windows like a third, louder heartbeat. He stepped closer. Not soft, not threatening, just sure. You told me monsters who hate being monsters are boring, he said. Remember? Yes, I don't hate what I'm going to do, he said. Not at all. A shiver ran down my spine. What are you going to do? He moved past me, woke his laptop and pulled up 2 documents. In one window, my old samples, the abandoned book my agent had sent him. In the other, a scanned PDF of The Hunger Season. He dragged them side by side. It took 3 lines. The structure, the rhythm, the emotional beat. My skeleton wearing someone else's skin. How long have you known? I asked. Since before you stepped on the ferry, he said. Your agent sent me everything. I recognized the bones. So I bought a copy of her book to be sure. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to know if you could sit in the same story as your thief and keep writing, he said. If you could use the wound instead of letting it use you. That's cruel, I whispered. That's honest, he said. I don't have time for anything else. I swallowed. What happens now? He closed the laptop. Tomorrow night, he said, I'll sit under studio lights while some host asks about my process. Harper will smile and say nice things about my brain. And then I'm going to tell the truth. Live. You're going to accuse her on air, I asked. I'm going to describe, he said. A young, unknown writer whose work was lifted and repackaged. I'm going to mention dates and drafts and emails. Then I'm going to dedicate my new book on camera to the ghosts the industry tried to erase. My knees felt unreliable. They'll cut you off, I said. Edit around it. Make you look unhinged. Maybe, he said. Or maybe they'll smell blood and keep rolling. People love a public execution more than a tidy comeback story. And me, I asked, where do I fit in that? That depends on whether you're willing to stop being invisible. The room went quiet, except for the storm. I brought you here because you write like someone who's been robbed, he said. Because you know what it feels like to have your work stolen and your name erased. That's why your page is cut. That's why I want you. And if I don't want to be dragged into your war, I said, if I just want the paycheck and to vanish. Then I won't say your name, he said. I'll point at the rot without pointing at you. You can go back to haunting the industry in silence. And if I say yes, I asked, if I want it out there? Then you stand next to me when the cameras roll, he said. You don't have to speak. You just have to exist where they can't pretend you don't. I'll do the talking. Thunder cracked so close it shook the glass. You're asking me, I said, to help you blow up the career of someone the industry loves on live TV in my name. I'm asking you, he corrected, if you want your story back. He stepped closer again. Close enough that I could see the tiny white scar near his jaw. Close enough that I could smell rain and coffee and something warm underneath. Clara, he said my name low. You're not the ghost here. She is. She stole your life and tried it on. Let me pull the sheet off. His intensity should have scared me. It didn't. I don't know how to be anything but a ghost, I admitted. That's fine, he said. Dragging ghosts into the light is what I do. Our eyes locked. For a moment, it wasn't about Harper or the book or the show. It was about this room, this storm, and the exact way our damage lined up. Think about it, he said, finally stepping back. You don't have to answer tonight. He turned toward the window, watching waves explode against the cliffs. But if you stay invisible, he added quietly, make sure it's because you chose the dark, not because someone shoved you there. I left the mind room with my notebook clenched too tight in my hand, pulse still racing. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, another one had just found its center, and this time, it was me. Đó chỉ ha Anna, viết chương 6, 1500 từ plus 20 đúng chuẩn Mỹ, emotional revenge payoff plus steamy ending. Anna đã đem từ mùng 198 words, liền mạch, dễ đưa vào vioi, không lạc tông. The day of the broadcast arrived with a sky so clear it felt wrong. No fog, no storm, no warning. Just pale sunlight across the island, and the low thrum of the helicopter blades as the pilot helped me strap in. I still wasn't sure I was doing the right thing. Silas hadn't pushed. Not once. After our fight in the mind room, he'd given me space. No notes on the fridge. No orders. Just one quiet sentence outside my door. When you decide. Decide for you, not for me. S. I'd sat with that line for hours, and at the end of it, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my name back. The helicopter lifted from the pad, the mansion shrinking beneath us, until it looked like a dark stone heartbeat carved into the cliff. Silas sat across from me wearing a black coat and his usual air of focused menace. He looked calm, too calm, like a man who'd already made peace with whatever explosion he was about to set off. You can still step out once we land, he said over the headset. So can you, I shot back. He smirked, a small, sharp cut of amusement. Not anymore. The city rose into view, glass gleaming in the afternoon light. Seattle. Noise, crowds, cameras. A world too bright after weeks on the island. My stomach twisted. You're pale, Silas said. You're observant. You're scared, he added. Only of doing this badly, I said. Not of her. Good, he murmured. Fear sharpens. The helicopter touched down on the helipad of the broadcasting building. A handler dressed in too much black and too much attitude hustled us into a private elevator. "Mr. Hale, Ms. Lane is already in makeup," he said. "The producers would love a quick teaser shot of you two together." "No," Silas said. What? "No previews," Silas repeated. "No staged smiles, no staged chemistry. They get us when the cameras roll." "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." He fled the moment the elevator doors opened. Silas offered me a hand. I hesitated. "You can hold on," he said quietly, "or you can break your fingers pretending you're not shaking." I took his hand. His palm was warm, steady, real. He didn't let go until we reached the studio entrance. The green room smelled like powder and nerves. I spotted Harper immediately sitting in a swivel chair while a makeup artist dusted something luminous across her cheekbones. She turned when she saw Silas, and her entire face lit up. "Silas," she purred. "You look incredible. You look the same," he said, utterly flat. Her smile tightened. Then she saw me. For a heartbeat she froze. Then mask, a bright, condescending, polished smile. "Clara." "Oh my God, it's been so long." She gave a soft, pitying laugh. "I didn't know you were still in the industry. I didn't know you were still plagiarizing," I said sweetly. Her jaw clicked shut. Silas stepped slightly between us, not blocking, but aligning, choosing a side without words. The producer poked her head in. "You're on in 60 seconds. Let's move." Harper walked out first, hips swaying with performative confidence. I was right behind Silas, pulse thundering. When we stepped onto the set, the lights hit me like a slap. Bright, hot, unfiltered. The host smiled like a man who'd sold his soul for ratings a decade ago. "Welcome everyone to Crime After Dark," he announced. "Tonight we have best-selling author Silas Hale returning from his 2-year hiatus and award-winning editor Harper Lane joining him. Applause. Cameras tracking, the red light above the main lens blinking, live. And we have a special guest in the audience," the host added. "Silas, rumor has it you brought someone with you." The camera turned, straight to me. Silas didn't look at me, he looked at the host. "Not a guest," he said. "A witness." That got the audience murmuring. Harper laughed the way liars laugh when the rope tightens. "Oh, Silas," she said, always so dramatic. "You would know," he replied smoothly. "You edited my early drafts." She preened. "I did." "And Clara?" he asked. "You edited hers too, didn't you?" The studio went still. Harper's smile froze, spreading into something brittle. "I don't understand the insinuation." "You don't need to," he said. "The audience will." He gestured to the screen behind them. A giant display flickered to life. On one side, my unpublished manuscript. Date stamped. Registered. My words. My structure. On the other side, page after page of Harper's best-selling novel. The same. Sentence for sentence in some places. Emotion for emotion. Scene for scene. Gasps rippled across the audience. The host stared at the screen like he'd just realized he was inside a scandal big enough to trend for days. Silas Harper hissed, "Turn that off." "No. This is defamation. This is evidence." She opened her mouth too late. Silas leaned forward, voice smooth as a blade. "Clara Reed wrote a book. You gutted it, dressed it in a new title, stole her life and sold it as art. I didn't. And the industry praised you," he continued. "Reviewed you, awarded you, invited you here tonight as a rising star." He turned to the camera. "I've spent 2 years silent. 2 years rewriting a story that was never mine to fix. But this," he gestured again at the screen, "this is the truth. And I won't let a thief profit off someone who writes with more pain and talent than you could fabricate in a lifetime." Harper stood. "This is slander." "No," Silas said. "This is me choosing the truth even when it destroys the story." The studio erupted, producers shouting, audience whispering, cameras zooming, security rushing toward Harper. The host said something about commercial break, but his words drowned under the noise. Silas finally stood, turned toward me, and held out his hand. "Come with me," he said. I did. We walked off the set together. Past the staring staff, past Harper's shrieking, past the chaos Silas had unleashed with surgical precision. He never let go of my hand. Back on the roof, the helicopter waited. Wind whipped around us cold and wild. Seattle glittered below like a city made of broken glass. You didn't have to do that, I said quietly. I did. He looked at me. I wasn't going to let the world keep praising a ghost wearing your skin. My throat tightened. Silas. I whispered my career. Your name, he cut in, is not dead. It's been buried. That's different. The wind tugged at his coat. Rain threatened in the clouds again. He stepped closer. Clara, he said softly, do you understand what you just did? I stood next to you. You stepped into the light. He brushed a thumb across my cheek, barely there but enough to make my breath catch. You don't disappear anymore, he murmured. I don't know how to be seen, I admitted. Then let me teach you. His hand slid to my jaw, gentle, reverent, like he was touching something he didn't trust himself with. I want, he whispered, echoing the line I'd rewritten a dozen times, and wanting is the problem. My pulse stuttered. Silas, you don't have to want me back, he said. You don't have to want anything. Just don't run. I'm not running. He exhaled slow and shaky, the first crack in his armor. Then his forehead touched mine, tentative, searching like a man scared of breaking something fragile. I'm going to kiss you now, he whispered. Okay. The kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was restrained hunger, the kind that builds in the quiet, in stolen glances, in storm-lit rooms and shared notebooks. His hand slid into my hair, mine fisted in his coat. He kissed like a man who had waited too long, thought too much, held back too hard. When he finally pulled away, both of us were breathing like we'd run. The helicopter pilot tapped impatiently on the window. Silas looked at him, then at me. Come home, he said simply. Home. He nodded. The island. But what happens now? I asked. Now he said we write a book with both our names on it. He laced his fingers with mine and led me toward the helicopter. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, the light didn't feel like something I needed to hide from. It felt like something I had earned. Something Silas had dragged me toward. Something we'd stepped into together.